All right, looks like we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's debate on evolution. Tonight, I have Dr. Dino and Preston here with me to debate the important question: is there good evidence for evolution? Nothing beats a good old-fashioned evolution debate. So, Preston and Kent, thank you so much for being here for this debate on evolution. Preston, why don't we start with you in terms of introductions? What I like to do here on the show is before we get into the opening statements themselves, let's kind of get to know the debaters a little bit, break the ice. And Preston, since this is your first time here on the program, I do appreciate you being willing to engage in this debate. How you doing today, and a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Donnie. I'm doing well. As y'all heard, my name is Preston. I am a cellular and molecular biology major. Interested here in talking about evolution. I appreciate what Donnie does here, and I appreciate Kent Hovind here being with me and being able to have this important conversation with me. I'm mostly interested here today just to have a conversation. I know it's coined as a debate, but I just want to talk. You know, me and Kent I'm sure, have way more in common than we have differences, and this one belief that we differ on doesn't of course define us. So I think we can have a friendly conversation, have a little banter, and hopefully some people in the audience that may be leaning one way or another, they can maybe see a truth on one side or another. I just hope that they are willing to have an open mind and hear what both sides have to say.
Okay, thank you so much for that intro, Preston. That sounds great to me. Some conversation, a little bit of banter here, and we are going to keep it more free-flowing and organic, as we've been doing in this Evolution Debate Challenge series. We are going to be having 10-minute opening statements, but then we're just going to have a free-flowing discussion, engaging one point or one topic at a time. So, Kent Hovind, good to have you back as well, brother. How you been? A little bit about Dal.
Great. Looks like my mic was still muted. There we go. Great. Good to be back with you, Donnie. We've done quite a few debates here. I believe the Bible is true. We have a Christian camp, a science center, a museum, an amazing place here. Dinosaur Adventureland. We're straight north of Pensacola, 70 miles in Lenox, Alabama. Someone gave us 140 acres here. We're having a blast building it and taking visitors from all over the world. It's free. Come on down, Preston. We'll show you around the place. We believe God made everything. Dinosaurs, stars, everything in 6 days, like he said he did. We defend the Bible as being scientifically accurate, and the evolution theory is one of the dumbest religions in the world. Those are the nice things we say about it. Go ahead.
Thank you for the intro there, Kent. Also, for the audience sake, yes, as we usually do, we are going to get you guys involved, make this interactive. We're going to have an audience Q&A after the discussion and closing statement. So please just make sure you're tagging me with your questions, either at Standing for Truth or at Donnie, and that way I won't miss them. So with that, Preston, we are going to hand it over to you. We'll take about 10 minutes and kind of set the foundation for what we're going to discuss tonight. We'll do the same for Kent, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So whenever you're ready.
Fantastic. Let me get my timer started here. Share screens. Y'all should be able to see that, correct?
Yes, looks good.
Fantastic. So again, I want to appreciate everyone for being here, and for Donnie and Kent for giving me the time to come here and spew my beliefs. But the topic for today is there good evidence for evolution? And I think that's an undoubtable yes. And I'm going to show just some brief explanations of why I believe so, and break down some evidences that I have that I think are relatively easy to understand. I'm not going to get into anything too complex, anything too scientific. So first, I want to start with what do we know? Unequivocal facts that we know about the universe, okay? We know that closely related organisms have closely related structures. We know that closely related organisms share more DNA with each other than they do with distant cousins. We know that mutations happen and that they are passed on to offspring, and these mutations can be deleterious, they can be neutral, or they can be beneficial. We know that speciation happens, and we know that the farther you dig into the ground, the simpler organisms become, and the more similar to each other they become. And now, what does evolution actually say? I hear people kind of mischaracterize what the theory of evolution actually is quite often. And what evolution actually says is it takes the fact that organic life is already on Earth. You can come up with any theory you like about how life got here that is independent of evolution. If you want to believe God created the first life, you're more than welcome to that, because that's pretty much all we got on the science side as well, right? So organic life is on Earth, and over time, this life can and does change. Again, doesn't make any claims about how the universe started or how life started either. And now I want to talk about fossils. I think fossils are a very easy way to see the changes through time of organisms. So evolution predicts that as you dig deeper, as you go back in time, organisms are going to get more similar, assuming they're related. So fossils of seemingly dissimilar organisms show structures that are only seen in present-day related organisms. And a very important part of any theory of science is able to make predictions, okay? So a prediction evolution can make would say that cetaceans, which are the whale family, right? Whales, blue whales, dolphins, things like that. Evolution says they evolved from land mammals. So therefore, as we dig deeper, we should see whales and whale ancestors become more similar to what your average land mammal will look like. And I have this here. How did the blowhole get there? That's always the question, right? If they came from a land mammal, how to get there? Well, this is a diagram showing some evidences of skulls. Trace back from the shallowest in the ground on the bottom right to the deepest in the ground on the top left. And you can see going from the deepest to the shallowest, so moving from back in time to forward in time, we see the blowhole actually begins to recede farther and farther back the snout of what used to be a land mammal. And now I already can kind of figure out what the next question would be if you don't buy into this. Well, how do I know any of these are related? Well, modern day whales have a very, very, very unique middle ear structure. You can see that on the right. This middle ear structure is surrounded by a bony labyrinth. It almost looks like a seashell. And this is only found in whales. Cetaceans are the only vertebrates that have this structure. So evolution can predict that fossils of whale ancestors should show, at least in part, this unique structure. And I want to introduce you to Indoheus. This is, from what I could tell, the farthest we can go back and say this is definitely a whale ancestor. And I completely understand and fully admit that seeing that jump from an Indoheus to a fin whale on the right is a little far-fetched. But we can track this because Indoheus shows this exact same middle ear structure. The exact same middle ear structure. Which again is only shown in present-day cetaceans. Only in cetaceans. No other vertebrates anywhere on the planet has this middle ear. So since we already know for a fact that you pass down genes and you pass down traits to your offspring, it's a rule of the universe, a rule of DNA. We know that this unique middle ear structure had to have passed down, and we can track this up through the geological column, which coincides just perfectly well with the recession of that blowhole. This I want to hit on just briefly because homologous structures are done to death, and I fully agree with that. They're done to death. I'm pretty sure everyone knows what a homologous structure is at this point. Similar structures that we say evolved from a common ancestor. And creationists often say that this is proof of common designer, and it's hard to debate that, right? Well, it could be. However, in the face of analogous structures, the common design argument falls a little flat. So analogous structures are structures that share the exact same function as each other, but are built in different ways. The example I have on the screen here is blood. So mammals, fish, they use a protein in their blood that carries oxygen. Remember, blood's main function is to carry oxygen. They use hemoglobin, and that gives it its characteristic red color. However, crustaceans and squids use a completely different chemical called oxyhemocyanin, and this shows a blue color. Segmented worms use something called chlorocrurin. This is a green color. Marine worms use hemerythrin, which shows a purple color. So if homologous structures are evidence for a common designer because he was too lazy to redesign wings and hands and legs for every animal, I understand that. Why wouldn't he use the same blood? Blood has the same function throughout all of these different blood types, only differing in the molecule that carries oxygen. Maybe he did it because he likes pretty colors. I don't know. I think the purple blood's kind of pretty, but this is probably the most common example of analogous structures, the wings, right? Everyone's heard of that. Bat wings are built from their arm, and the extensions of their phalanges, their fingers, are webbed together, while the bird is just their arm coming out with the feathers coming off with their hollow bones. And I'm running a little low on time here. I got about 2.5 minutes left. So I just want to rephrase what I believe the creationist argument to be. And it's an argument that I completely understand and identify with. Okay? So everyone knows that a Chihuahua is a descendant of a wolf. It's common knowledge. It's well documented how we got from wolves to Chihuahuas. No one's going to argue against that. However, imagine we take a Chihuahua, we go back in time, and we show it to the earliest hunter-gatherer humans and say, look, this is a wolf. What is the hunter-gatherer going to say? They're going to call you crazy. They're going to say, that's not a wolf. It's not the same size. It doesn't have the same build. It's nothing like a wolf. It's closer to a rat than a wolf, right? So my question would be, how would you prove this to them? We know for a fact they come from wolves. So how would you prove this to an early hunter-gatherer? And in my opinion, this is what the issue lies that a lot of people have with evolution, is the same idea. They see two seemingly unrelated organisms, right? For here, I have two tetrapods shown. So taxonomy classifies these in the same clade, so they are related. They're both tetrapods, meaning they're vertebrates and they're four-limbed. And you could say there's no way those two are related because they look nothing alike. Just like a hunter-gatherer would say, there's no way the wolf and the Chihuahua are exactly alike, or are alike or are related because they look nothing alike. And the argument that a creation would make against this slide here, saying these two are related, I believe is the same argument from not being able to grasp how things would change, like a hunter-gatherer would from a wolf to a Chihuahua. But they are related. We can see here, as you dig deep enough, you don't find tetrapods. You don't even find vertebrates. If you dig so deep, you only find invertebrates, like what we see on the left. Get to a certain layer, digging higher up, we only see vertebrates and invertebrates, but we don't see tetrapods. And then eventually we get to a point where all of a sudden tetrapods are seen in the geological column, meaning that they must have appeared and evolved and changed over time, because there are strata that we see certain types of organisms, and in certain strata, certain types of organisms are not present. And with that, I think I'm out of time, so I will end that there.
Okay, Preston, thank you so much for your 10-minute opening argument. I appreciate the visuals as well. What we'll do is hand it over to Kent now for roughly 10 minutes, and then we will jump into a discussion where we are engaging each point and topic at a time. So here we go. Kent, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Preston. You've been thoroughly indoctrinated by your university. They're doing a great job of brainwashing you to believing their propaganda. I'll take on every professor in your university all at the same time. Some of the things you taught, I know this is what they teach. I was taught the same things. They're simply not true. First of all, there is no such thing as a geologic column. It does not exist anywhere. You don't go back in time when you dig deeper. You go down in the earth when you dig deeper, okay? This textbook shows the so-called geologic column, and it says the bottom layer is 2.5 billion years old, and the top layer is only 10,000 years old. I say, excuse me, where's this new material coming from? Outer space? All the layers are the same age, Preston. If you shuffle a deck of cards, the top card's not younger. Every speck of dirt on the planet's the same age. You don't go back in time when you dig down. All the layers, they're not different ages. This new material has to be coming from outer space to be a different age. There is no such thing as a geologic column. And all of your argument is based on the idea that if you go deeper, we find different animals. Well, first of all, who's doing the checking and who gets to publish the material? It has to match their religion. The geologic column is completely imaginary. It is the Bible to the evolutionist. This is their Bible. They think in terms of Cenozoic and Mesozoic and Paleozoic era. There's no such thing. No such thing as a Jurassic era. All the layers are the same age. But this is what guides their thinking. They think their life, their world around them, they history that way. If you shake a jar of mixed materials, gravel, sand, clay, like we have in our gravel pit here, it'll always settle out into layers. And all the layers are the same age. How can the top layer be younger? Did it come from outer space? Now, it's a fact the Earth has layers. It is not a fact. Evolutionist says they formed slowly over millions of years. I say, really? Where did it come from? Creationist says these layers are all from the flood, which would shake up all the layers in a heartbeat. We have this little thing here. We flip over, different colors. It's only got 2 colors, but it'll make 20 or 30 layers of sand in here in minutes. It doesn't take millions of years. The flood is what formed all the layers in 1 year. The geologic column is the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place in the world, and that is the textbooks. This textbook author admitted it, probably got fired for admitting it. If there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. Somebody said, oh, we found it in North Dakota. Well, look, there's a random chance if 10 billion people all over the world all shuffled a deck of cards. I suppose there's a chance that we might find somebody to get, all the hearts together and all the spades together. Wow. That, slim chance, but it could happen. Sure. It's an awfully big world, and the chances of them finding the layers in the order that they said they exist on one place, I suppose this could happen. But the geologic column, if it existed, would be 100 miles thick. It doesn't exist anywhere. That's one of the lies in the textbooks I cover in my video number 4. Your biggest argument tonight was from homology. Let's see, right there, homology, okay? Oh, hang on. Because they are similar, have similar structure, therefore they must have evolved one from the other, okay? And you don't go back in time. There's no such thing as back in time. Many times I've wished I could go back just 5 seconds to undo the dumb thing I just did. Anybody else ever feel the same? Just a couple seconds, please, Lord. Can we just rewind the clock? But you can't. And you can't go back in time when you dig down into the earth. All the layers are the same age. The homology argument is ludicrous on its face. The fact that there are similarities does not prove a common ancestry. It's a structure that works. A lot of animals want their front leg to be able to twist and move, and like your hand does. So they need 2 bones in the wrist, and the humerus and the radius and the ulna and the carpals and the metacarpals. It's a great design. Works great. The fish want to be able to swim and move their flippers around so they can twist them and contort them to dart around in the water. The birds want to be able to tweak their wing, angle of their wings so they can fly and evade predators if need be. So the homology argument falls flat on its face. Each of these is so incredibly designed that it would baffle a NASA engineer to make one. They can't get one close to that. And they all happen by chance? No, Preston, they were all designed. And the bones develop from different genes on the chromosomes. Evolutionists have never discussed that to my knowledge. Why are they all coming from different genes on the chromosome if they're supposed to be ancestral to each other? Comparative anatomy provides further evidence of evolution, this textbook says. The commonalities suggest these animals are all related. They probably had a common ancestor. They're not even capable of thinking outside the box. Maybe they have a common designer. The same guy designed them, and it works awfully good. So no, I'm sorry, there is no geologic column. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting all these layers. Thousands of these have been found. Dead trees only stand up a couple years, then they fall down. The flood would make all the layers in 1 year, just like shaking up the sand art thing. We'll make a whole bunch of layers in a few minutes. I'll get the base for it here. You can watch it happen for those not paying attention to the sermon anyway. Here, be a stair maker so some of the kids can go, oh, wow, look, Mommy. Okay, over this way. So there is no geologic column. These petrified trees in the vertical position are common. They're standing straight up, running through all the layers. How can the layers be different ages? Yellowstone's got a fence around there as people kept picking pieces of petrified wood off of it so nobody would steal more wood. Petrified tree, the whole premise of your argument is based on the idea, the false idea, that the layers are different ages. They simply are not. All the layers formed in one big flood in the days of Noah. The Bible says at the end of time there would be scoffers who would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood. The flood did all of this. Here in central Alabama, where we are, you could drive down there, Preston, from Knoxville. There's a large coal mine where they find dozens and dozens of petrified trees standing up. Some of them sitting, they start right on top of a seam of coal. Some go right through the seam of coal. A friend of mine works up there as a manager of one of the projects. He said, yeah, we find them all the time. Petrified trees standing up, running through these different seams. Sometimes, he said, if you put all the samples together, we can prove that the Blue Creek and the Mary Lee formation of coal formed essentially within days of each other, because the petrified trees, if you take sample A, B, C, D, E, F, G, put it all together, it's obvious they both formed before either tree could rot. So it is simply not common sense to say the layers are different ages. They're shuffled by a big flood. Here's a tree with bottoms in one layer of coal, the top's in a different layer of coal, same tree, separated by millions of years. Joggins, Nova Scotia is famous for its petrified trees standing up. They're all over up there. Donnie, you ought to go get pictures of that. I don't know if you can get over to Nova Scotia. Your Canadian Communist government allow you to travel at all? Can you go out of your house? And anyway, go get me some more pictures of this. I got some friends went up there and took a few pictures. I'd like to get a bunch more. Ian Juby's done a lot of research on this, ianjuby.org. If you want to get a hold of him, yeah, they're all over the place. So I think your whole premise that the layers of the earth are different ages, there's where it's flawed. You said several other things that are just, I think, fatally flawed. Let me get my notes here. You said, there's evidence for evolution? Undoubtedly, yes. Well, no, it is doubtable. And a good scientist would always doubt and say, wait a minute, let me just rethink this. Is this propaganda? Could it be that, I mean, if everybody has to follow the herd, like the scientists, then we'd never have any new inventions or things, discoveries in science. If everything has to be peer-reviewed, well, the first guy who discovers a new idea doesn't have any peers. Nobody else thought of it. First guy to make an airplane, who's going to peer-review his stuff? So no, the homology structure you mentioned, the geologic column, the organic theory of evolution, you want to start with life already on Earth. I can understand why, because nobody has got a good answer on how life got started. Therefore, you don't have a complete theory. My theory says somebody outside of time, space, matter had to create time, space, matter, create the Earth, started life, and he gave all the life forms the ability to produce a variety of offspring. It's true. Dogs always make dogs. Coyotes and dogs and wolves are probably all the same ancestor. We cover all that in my video series, number 4. Let's see. I wanted to get that one. There are all kinds of cows in the world, and they can jump, some of them. But there's a limit. There are always going to be cows. They got a cow jumping over a 6-foot fence. That's pretty high. I don't think they'll ever get a cow to jump over the moon, though. There's a limit. Preston, there are lots of variations that happen. No question. Variations between Chihuahua and Great Dane are pretty incredible. But there's a limit. They'll never get a Chihuahua the size of a flea or as big as an elephant or as big as Texas. There's a limit. So 400 breeds of cattle might have had a common ancestor called a cow. That's not evolution. That's a variation of the same kind. God said they would bring forth after their kind. He said it 24 times in the first 7 chapters. That's all we've ever seen. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. But you guys want to have the cow coming from an amoeba along with the frog and the butterfly and the bird and everything else. This is the propaganda they're teaching you, Preston. You should get your money back. They're lying to you. There is no evidence whatsoever of a butterfly producing a non-butterfly ever, or an amoeba producing a non-amoeba. But they teach right here, the butterfly, the amoeba turned into all the animals. This is absolute propaganda. Variations happen, but they're limited to the same kind every time. Your turn. Go ahead.
Okay, Kent, thank you so much for your 10-minute opening statement. Gentlemen, we're just going to get right into the open discussion now. And since Kent just ended, Preston, why don't we give you the floor to pick the first topic, ask the first question, and basically start us off in this open discussion portion. And also a reminder to the audience as the discussion is taking place, when you send in your question, just make sure that you're tagging me, and then that'll be the best way for me not to miss it. Okay, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I do want to mention one thing. Kent did call me out and say I said evolution is undoubtable. And I fully agree with everything that he said after. I shouldn't have said that. I fully agree that science has its basis in doubt. So I should not have said that I shouldn't doubt evolution. I think I have doubted evolution in my own time of watching these debates. I found things that didn't make sense to me at the time, and I did doubt, and I went and did my own research. So I fully agree with everything you stated there, that saying it was undoubtable was a poor choice of words. What I'm more meant by that was I believe we have sufficient evidence that at this point, with the evidence that we've collected up until this point of time, evolution is a very sound theory. Hope that clears that up there. For regards to what we should talk about first, can you pull up, Kent, if you do not mind, you were talking about the geological columns, and you had something in the textbook from HBJ Earth Science that said there's no evidence, like no such column exists or something.
Okay. There it is.
Thank you very much. Yeah, perfect. So if we actually read that quote, it says, if there were a column of sediments deposited continuously since the formation of Earth, the entire history of the planet could be reconstructed. Unfortunately, no such column exists. So we can highlight just the one sentence and say no such column exists and move on and assume that was talking about the entire geologic column. That wasn't. That's talking about specifically sediments, sedimentary rock. And I agree with this. There is absolutely no part of the earth where it is only sedimentary rock all the way from the bottom to the top. So I'm not making any accusations here, but I think it is important that we fully read what we're quoting at this point. But as for points, I think I brought up an interesting point during my opening statement of the Chihuahua to an early human, right? And I believe, I don't want to put
actually,
words in
Preston.
Yes, sir.
If it's okay with you, gentlemen, of course, I want to keep this free flowing and organic. Maybe we should stop there before we get to the next point and see if Kent had anything he wanted to add.
Absolutely.
Specifically on the geologic column topic. I appreciate the points, Preston. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, that's great. One topic at a time. We'll take any topic you'd like, but if you want to get on the geologic column, if there were a column of sediments deposited continuously since the formation of the Earth, the entire history of the planet could be reconstructed. No such column exists. The geologic column, you guys have never answered my simple question. If the top layer is younger, where did it come from? How can one layer be younger? They put the dates on here and say, look, this top layer is only 10,000 years old. Where did it come from 10,000 years ago?
So to answer that, I would have to ask, when we radiometric date something, not specifically like the isotopes we're dating, but what do you think we are asserting that we're dating? If that question made any sense.
Well, that a little bit evading the point. Radiometric dating wasn't invented until the 1950s. Willard Libby, 1946, got a Nobel Prize for it sometime in there. The geologic column was made up in 1830. And it is the standard. It has to match the geologic column. So if they obtain a radiometric date from potassium argon dating, rubidium, strontium, lead 208, lead 206, carbon 14, carbon 13, it wouldn't matter. It has to match the geologic column or it'll be rejected. They may test the same sample over and over until they get a date they want. It's not as simple as that. And I give a long answer to that on my video number 7 of my seminar series, which you can get on drdino.com. So the bigger question is, though, if the Holocene era is 10,000 years old, where did the material come from? Moving it from here to here does not change the age of it. Shuffling the deck of cards does not change the age of them. Is this one now younger because it's on top? No. This is where your whole geologic column is a hoax. That's where you get brainwashed. During the Scopes monkey trial, 1925, the atheist lawyer said, obviously the top layer is the youngest. The other lawyer should have stopped right there and said, no, it's not obviously the top layer is the youngest. All of your religion is built on that one assumption, that the layers are different ages. What if all the layers are the same age, Preston? What if they wwere simply shuffled and sorted because of a massive flood? Then you would probably find animals in different layers, like similar body density. Maybe all the fish would be in the same layer because they have a similar body density. Okay?
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but
yeah,
kind of heading fast. So I want to go back to not, you weren't changing topics, but I want to address.
No. I want to know. I want to know the geologic column. Where's the top layer coming from?
Absolutely.
You said they're different ages.
Well, I want to preface that because that's why I asked my original question is, what do you think we're actually dating when we radiometrically date something?
Okay. In any honest court of law, if you brought in a carbon date and said, Your Honor, I think this plastic in this pin is, 12.6 thousand years old or whatever. This is based on the very obvious assumption that we know the material was not contaminated to begin with. We know the ratio that was in it to begin with, and we know there's never been any contamination. We know that the decay rates always remain constant. There are way too many variables. I use the illustration. If you walked into the room and you found a candle burning on a table, and I asked you the simple, obvious question, when was it lit? You said, I don't know, it was burning when I got here. Okay, well, let's do some science. What can we observe, study, test, demonstrate? We can observe the height of the candle. Let's measure it. We'll get a micrometer and get it down to the nearest bazillionth of an inch, okay? It is 7 inches tall. Okay, when was it lit? That doesn't tell me. Well, let's measure how fast it burns. Let's get a stopwatch, Olympic stopwatch, to time it. It's burning an inch an hour. These are two scientific facts. It is 7 inches tall. It's burning an inch an hour. When was it lit? We still don't know, and now we got to go into assumptions. Has it always burned at the same rate? How tall was it when it started? Maybe there was a breeze blowing that made it burn faster. There are just too many variables here. It's the same with all those dating methods. Has it always decayed at the same rate for billions of years? Radiometric decay is a random event, To say it's always been the same, could the sample have been contaminated to begin with? Maybe it was created with some radiometric materials in it.
So we do have ways to tell that things are, it's called isochron dating. You can, if we're worried about the contamination, we can take the ratio of what could appear as a contaminant. So let's say, we're decaying into strontium or something. I'm not the best in elements with radiometric dating. We can take the daughter isotope and we can take, it's already known, and we can graph the ratio between that and what its parent isotope is and its daughter isotope. And those should remain constant and be a straight line unless there was contamination. If there was contamination, it wouldn't be a straight line because those ratios mathematically have to be constant. But I want to ask again, because I'm agreeing with a lot of what you're saying here. And I think the reason why we're not having agreement here is because I don't think we agree on what we're dating when we date rock. So if I date an igneous rock, what am I actually dating? Or what do you think we are actually dating?
Well, if it's igneous rock, from the word ignited, means it's been burned. That would be like lava or ash flows or something like that, from the word igneous, ignite. You're trying to, at that point, trying to determine when was it set on fire? When was it ignited? When did it form? But see, we know like the sunlight produces all kinds of things, makes things happen on the Earth. The radiometric dating of any, whether it be carbon-14, uranium, strontium, all of them, you don't know the initial content. You're claiming this fossil is 10 billion years or 5 million years old. Like, what the Earth was like 5 million years ago? You can't know that. You can't know it's always been the same decay rate. And there are all kinds of examples where the decay, they get the wrong number. Here's my candle illustration, okay? You simply don't know how tall it was.
Can I talk about when you said that it was ignited? So we're not dating from when it was ignited. So for example, for argon dating, argon is a noble gas, a gas. So for example, with igneous rock, when it's molten, we're going to lose argon as gas. However, once it solidifies rather, that argon that is still in there is trapped in there. And thus starts the decay, where we can track the ratio and the half-lives. So I'm not dating the age of the rock. I'm dating how long ago it was laid. So I agree with everything you were saying beforehand, where yes, the rocks are technically the same ages, right? Well, you have elements are still being made and stars and supernovas, but on the Earth, they were probably all made at the same time. And we can't have rock from outer space with an asteroid or something, but most of it is the Earth recycling what's already there with tectonic plates, movement, and things. We reshuffle things and we send rock up out with volcanic eruptions, with metamorphosis, with metamorphic rock, with sedimentary rocks, with erosion and things. So I'm not dating how old the rock is. I'm dating how long has it been there in this specific moment, solidified. So I know argon is in there, and thus its half-life has to be constant.
So are there any known factors that will influence the rate of that decay? Can it be speeded up or slowed down?
I'm sure it can if you had enough energy. I don't know specifically of any examples.
Well, so but do you understand how your entire assumption there is we know the age of this layer because we know it was never contaminated. We know the decay rate's always been the same. And a freshman law student could have that one thrown out of court. Your Honor, you can't possibly know the decay rate's always been the same. Most of the Earth is sedimentary rock, by the way. Igneous rock's only 15% of the surface of the Earth. So I think understand how important it is for the evolutionists to preserve this idea of time. Time is the God of the evolutionist. If it can be demonstrated the Earth is not billions of years old and all the geologic column formed at one time, then everything else about evolution doesn't matter. Sure, we see variations, but there isn't enough time for it to go any further than, cows produce cows. There isn't, and I think pulling time out of the equation would really deflate the entire evolution balloon. And so I know it's important for you to get billions of years in the theory, and that's where the radiometric decay comes. I have lots of examples on my seminar series, number 7, to get the wildly wrong dates. They date it. Wow, how did we get that date? I don't know. Try it again. How do you know the first one was wrong? Well, it didn't match the geologic column. The geologic column is the standard they measure by, not the radiometric dating. If a radiometric date does not fit, it'll be rejected. Tell you what, take a sample of ore that contains uranium, okay? Break it up into 10 pieces, send it to 10 different laboratories, blind test. See if all 10 give you the same date. I'd bet you $20 they will not.
I don't know if that's ever been done, but I'd bet you $20 the other way that it would. And I know there are examples of us getting the wrong number with carbon dating. I was in organic chemistry lab and I got a product and my percent yield was 120%. Does that mean I broke the laws of physics? No. I said, how did I do this incorrectly? My calculation, right? It's not about. Good.
How did you know it was incorrect? Because it's over 100%, right?
Yes.
What if it would have come back 99? Would you have then rechecked it or just accepted it?
I probably would have rechecked it because that's not even cells can get to that degree of yield.
See, you could tell, obviously, this can't be right. But had it been within a reasonable range that you expected, you would have accepted it and not retested it. I think that's not wise for a scientist. You should always be willing to be suspect of everything. Geologic column invented in 1830 before they had any of these dating methods.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we test in science. We don't do an experiment once and say, this is how the universe works. If another student did the exact same experiments and got a wildly different percent yield, then we would know something happened with one of us, right? That's the basis of science. And these radiometric dates weren't just gotten once and then we said, okay, that's the age of the universe or the age of that layer. They are repeatedly tested and repeatedly gotten. And the reason why we know they're repeatedly tested and repeatedly gotten is because we know the dates of the rocks and we go to a different area and we want to figure out, okay, what are we working with? What time period are we working with? You can date that rock and it matches up with what's expected.
I know that's what you've been taught.
In a nutshell.
That is what you've been taught. You've been taught wrong. That is not what happens, okay? But let's get back to a different topic. let's do a test. Let's test it over and over again.
What does happen then?
They don't always get the same number. Try this. Take a rock of a sample of uranium ore, break it into 10 sections, send it to 10 laboratories scattered across the country. Don't tell any of them you're sending it to somebody else. Just ask them, how old is this rock? They will send back a letter or an email saying, where did you find it? What difference should that make?
It's
it shouldn't make any difference where I found it.
What the environmental conditions are like.
So that could affect the decay rate?
No, it wouldn't affect the decay rate. It would affect what's prevalent in the rock or in the uranium.
Look, if it's that simple, break it into 10 pieces, send it to 10 laboratories, don't tell them anything. They're going to want $500 or whatever to test the sample.
I would if I was going to say it's $500, so I'm not. As a college student, I don't exactly have those funds, but I'd be willing to crowdfund it for sure.
They will ask where you found it because they want to know which layer of dirt it came from to bracket it on the already existing geologic column. They start with the assumption, oh, you found it in the Cenozoic era, therefore it must be this age. You shouldn't have to tell them anything, nothing. Don't tell them where you found it or anything. Say, here's my $500, test this for me. And I tell you, they will get different numbers. That would be science.
Not if they're testing it. Radiometric dating is relatively, you put it through a mass spec and see how much of the isotope is there or not.
Sure.
I mean, it's not a complex thing. I could do it at my university right now.
Sure. Try it 10 different times, get 10 different students to do it, see if they get the same number. Now, there have been farmers who've been testing this for thousands of years. Probably billions, tens of billions of tests have been done. They've discovered every time cows produce cows. There are no exceptions. You might get a big cow or a little cow, a black cow, brown cow, more milk, more beef, but you're always going to get a cow. They've already been testing this for thousands of years. Dogs produce dogs. Mosquitoes produce mosquitoes. There are no exceptions. But do you believe you are related to a mosquito if we went back far enough in time?
It depends on what you mean by related. Do I think I'm a descendant of a mosquito? No.
Are you and a mosquito a descendant of the same ant? You both have the same great grandpa.
Eventually there was, I'm not actually certain where the breakoff was between animals, or I'm sorry, insects and normal animals. But eventually, or in the past, there was something that was simple that broke off in two different populations. And one went one way and had different changes, and the other went another way with their own changes. And thus it led to different forms of life.
Well, this family tree I'm showing here, I forget which textbook this is from. I have how many textbooks here? 100 of them. They all teach this same concept that all life forms came from a common ancestor, which was a single-celled creature like a protozoa or an amoeba or a bacteria, a single-celled creature of some kind. They have the humans, the birds, the reptiles, the insects, the plants, and the worms all going to a common ancestor. I think this is propaganda. Every farmer that's been testing this for all of observable history says cows produce cows, they don't change. But this textbook is teaching the kids the amoeba somehow changed into a pine tree and a dinosaur and a human over billions of. First of all, there's not enough time for billions of generations, which is why time is so important to the evolution theory. But this isn't observable. You don't see any animal ever produce offspring that are recognizably a different kind. Chihuahua, Great Dane. Why they did that to the Chihuahua, I don't know. I think that was cruel and harmful, and the thing is completely useless, but they did it, okay?
I agree.
But you let them all loose in the woods, they wouldn't survive. If you turned all the dogs loose in the woods, turned all the cows loose in the woods, most of them wouldn't survive either. You got to babysit them, put a fence around your pasture, and watch out for coyotes and shoot them. So
I get what you're saying, but your main thing against evolution is we've never seen the change from a protozoa to a animal, right? It's a misnomer in science to say that you have to directly observe something for it to happen, or for you to be able to infer that this happens. If I drop this pencil right now, what's going to happen? It's going to fall.
Based on all human experience, gravity pulls things toward the center of the Earth,
Correct.
unless you're near a mountain range.
So if I go to Jupiter and I drop this pen, what's going to happen? Or this pencil, what's going to happen?
We would assume the same thing, probably drop faster. I think Jupiter's gravity is what, 3 times greater than ours, okay?
Much larger. But we've never dropped anything on Jupiter.
Right. That would be an assumption. Right.
We find laws that work and we can apply to what we can see. And what we can see is mutation. We see that they pass down these mutations. We've seen very important modifications happening, speciation happening. We've seen single cellular life turn into multicellular life, which in my opinion is the most important evolutionary step ever. That is the catalyst for all of the multicellular life we see. And we saw this happen in a small amount of time. So we can take what we see and we can extrapolate this out to the history of the universe. Just the same way I know dropping a pen on Jupiter is going to fall because we observe gravity here and we know for a fact it has to happen there. We observe evolution in the small scale here and we know it has to happen going backwards. And well, not going backwards, you don't evolve backwards, but going back in time, we see that things still evolve and still speciate.
Okay, let's take that analogy. We can observe that cows can jump, okay?
Yes.
I think we could observe if we gave our cow vitamins and made him work out at the gym every day, he could jump higher. So if we could get a cow to go from jumping 3 feet to jumping 4 feet and then jumping 6 feet, all we have to do is keep extrapolating. Someday the cow could jump over the moon.
The problem is that evolution never attempts to break the laws of physics, right? I mean, that's just impossible with a cow jumping over the moon with physics.
Why would that be impossible? I mean, if it can go from 3 feet to 4 feet to 5 feet to 6 feet, why not 250,000 miles?
Because of the laws of physics. I mean, a certain size of thing can only produce so much energy.
Right. Bingo. And a bacteria can only produce a bacteria. There's no gene code in an amoeba, single-celled creature, to make arms, heart, brain, muscle, nervous system. It's not there. But your chart shows all the creatures coming from, here you go, everything, the family tree. I know I could bet $20 that your books at your university show family trees like this one, maybe this exact one. We never see an amoeba or a single-celled creature of any kind. There are 20,000 different kinds of single-celled creatures. We've never seen any of them change to something else. Where is the gene code in a protozoa to make an eye or an ear or a lung or a gizzard?
It's not there because it's not multicellular. Yeah, I agree with that.
Even if it was multicellular.
We've seen that change of single cell to multicellular.
Well, I know you've been taught that. I disagree completely with that also. If you want to go to that topic, let's see, have they seen multicellular, single cell to multicellular? We can go, if you want to go on to a different topic. But back to your whole education is based on a completely faulty assumption that the Earth is billions of years old and the layers are different ages. Not true. The Earth is about 6,000 or 7,000 years old, and all the layers formed in one flood.
I just explained that we're not testing the age of the rock. I'm testing when it was layered, and to use your own argument, because I agree with the shuffling of the cards. No cards are different ages, and I'm not claiming that all the rock on the Earth is different ages. I'm claiming that they were laid down at different times, which I think even you would agree with, right? I mean, if you have layering, then they have to be layered at different times. But,
no,
I
think if you go to Google the video experiments in stratification, we're at the Navy laboratory in Colorado, of all places. They don't have an ocean in Colorado, but they have a Navy laboratory where they poured sediments into moving water, moving laterally. And it made 8 or 10 layers simultaneously. You can see the layers forming, not this way, they're forming this way.
But they were sediment.
All the sedimentation is happening horizontally, not vertically. So the idea that the layers are different ages is just that simple experiment they did said, wow, these layers form sideways. If the Earth, let me get my globe here. No, never mind. If the Earth under Noah's flood had the moon going around, still pulling the water up and down, the tide, or actually holding the tide while we spin under it, the water moving up and down in a tide also has to be moving in and out.
I agree, but it's sediment. It's sedimentary, so it would be sedimentary rock.
Most of the rock is sedimentary.
Yeah. I can't make any claims about that. Geology is not my strong suit with regards to the different kinds of rocks. I think I would agree with that. But so remember when we first started, I had you go back to that slide that you had that said that there was no single layer of all sedimentary rock. And there's no column of that, and I agree with that. So while that analogy works, that yes, multiple layers can happen really, really quickly with sediments. And so, but the entire Earth is not sedimentary rock. We have igneous and metamorphic rock. So they had to be, even if you want to say, I could give you, they happened the day after. So we had all the layers of the sediment happen at day 1, day 0. And then a volcano erupted on day 1 and put igneous rock on top. But what would happen if something died on day 0? What layer would you find it?
Well, this opens up another giant can of worms. If something died, how many animals died today, and how many are going to fossilize? Animals don't fossilize unless very special conditions. Noah's flood.
Fossilization's rare. Yeah.
Noah's flood probably made all the fossils, or nearly all the fossils on the planet. Animals died by the billions today. None are going to fossilize. Fossilization. The fact that we have fossils at all indicates a flood. Mount St. Helens made a whole lot of igneous material, and metamorphic changed by heat and pressure.
We can move on to this topic after that, but we could go back to what we were saying, because this is very important, especially for people listening, right? Like if day 0 you have the sedimentary layer rock happen, sediment happens. Day 1 or day 0 sediment, day 1 volcanic eruption, igneous rock. If something died on day 0, where would you find it on day 3?
Well, depending on the conditions, the igneous rock may have completely dissolved it and melted it and disappeared, turned it to ash. But we did see this happen at Mount St. Helens. It did happen at Mount St. Helens. It formed hundreds and hundreds of layers in one volcanic eruption, maybe even thousands of layers, depending how you want to count them. All these formed in one eruption. Would they all date the same age? All came from Mount St. Helens. You think they all would? I disagree.
More or less. I mean, you could. I don't know how accurate the dating is, but technically they could be laid at different times. I'm sure the bottom layer dried before the second layer, because that's how it has to work. But if something died when there was only the first layer, where would it be? I mean, it's a simple question. I mean, what if sediment happened day 0?
Yeah, assuming the igneous rock was not hot enough to destroy it, it would be between the 2 layers, right?
Yes. That's how we know things are different ages. When you go back down, you don't even have to date the rock. The farther you go down, the earlier things had, even if you want to say, you think the flood was a year long, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think I've heard you say that.
Noah was in the ark for a year. Some parts of the world might have only been covered for a few weeks. We don't know that it was a year.
Fair enough. But even if we say something that was underwater for the entire year, right? Constantly layering, constantly volcanic ashes, whatever. Something that died on day 3 is going to be deeper than something that died on day 264.
No.
Correct?
No, not if the layers are forming horizontally. As the tide goes up and down, the water is rushing in.
But they're not all sediment. If it was all sediment, I would agree with you.
Well, it can reshuffle the igneous rock just as well.
I mean, if it dips back in the mantle of the earth, yes, but not something that's in the column currently in the crust of the earth. It's that layer between the mantle and the crust that we're recycling. So that's how we know that things get older as you go down. And it makes completely sense that things that are simpler are lower down, and we get more complex as time goes on. So even if we said this happened after a year, sorry, I'll let you talk in a second. I'm taking time, but even if this formed in a year, then evolution just happened at an exceedingly increased rate, because things get so much more different as you go from bottom up and top down.
Okay, let's take that analogy. Let's say the flood of Noah created all the layers in 1 year. And all the animals are buried in those, many of them turned into fossils. There certainly are billions, maybe trillions of fossils in the world, if you want to count the microscopic stuff like, single cell stuff that's fossilized, then it's certainly into the quadrillions of fossils. You're saying if there's one down lower, it was buried first, possibly. But then you're assuming that this order that we see the fossils in shows a relationship of one changing into one above it. You're saying this one is simpler than this one, therefore sorry, this turned into this.
My brain shut off for a second there. Can you repeat? Okay. Just about 10 seconds back, I just completely blanked out, so I apologize for that.
Let's assume that you are correct, that the bottom layer was laid down before the top layer. But I think if you'll watch the video, Experiments in Stratification, you'll see that is not the case, okay? The layers form horizontally. If 10 or 12 layers, yes. Yeah, if 10 or 12 layers are forming horizontally, you could get a fossil on top deposited first, and then a fossil on the bottom deposited later. This could be younger on the bottom because of the horizontal movement of the water. But then you go right into the assumption that because we have birds on top and clams on the bottom, therefore clams slowly turn to birds because of the order of burial. The fact that they're buried.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but real quick, I don't believe clams turned into birds.
No. Slowly over billions of years, they change. Nobody has ever seen any animal change to anything else. You showed the whale going from the nostril on the front to the nostril on the back. You don't know any of those are related. There's animals today that got the nostrils on the front. They only produce babies with nostrils on the front. We don't see these changes that they taught you about. Preston, you've been brainwashed. This isn't science. This is a religion. You've been taught a religion that, wow, over millions of years, things can change. Well, we've seen billions of generations of bacteria in the laboratory. They grow up and get married and have babies in 8 minutes or 8 hours. So you can see thousands of generations in one scientist's lifetime, and they're still bacteria. And they do all kinds of mean things to them. They nuke them and microwave them and x-ray them, and they always make a bacteria.
I understand where you're going, but I still don't think we've gotten a very good explanation for how the flood would explain the different fossils, which was a bulk of my opening statement, was these fossils get different as you go down. And even if they were formed in a year, the bottom, and what you said is true. That's why if you find two fossils at different heights in the single layer of sedimentary rock, you can't really differentiate them that much because they absolutely could have died even in the same day, right? If we had a large flood come through, which I know, maybe trigger word flood, but you can have isolated floods, right? And so that's absolutely true. But what we date them between is between layers of igneous or metamorphic rock, where you had sedimentation and then you had to have a different events happen that wasn't sedimentation. And so things in that sediment, if you have your layer of igneous rock here, you have your sediment, everything living in the sediment or fossilized in the sediment, close-ish to the same age, right? But then everything above this layer of igneous rock has to be younger, or at the very least died before this volcanic eruption that laid this igneous rock happened.
That's a reasonable assumption, but how much younger? Could it have happened all in 3 weeks?
If the volcanic eruption happened, yes, but then you can't explain 3 weeks showing the difference between simple non-invertebrate life, that was a misnomer, simple invertebrate life to vertebrates, differed only by layers. I mean, you just don't find vertebrates past a certain layer.
Well, I would say that if there were a worldwide flood, like the Bible says, and like thousands of cultures through history have taught there was, animals would tend to be a little bit sorted based upon the obvious, number one, habitat. Simpler invertebrates, clams, would be found at the bottom because that's where they live. They're already at the bottom. They're the first ones buried. Birds are found at top because they're the last ones to die in a flood. So it would have nothing to do with evolution. It's a simple sorting based upon habitat. Clams don't normally hang out with birds, so probably they're sorted differently, different layers. Or maybe mobility. Clams can't run very fast. Maybe intelligence, maybe body density. In a court of law, I think a freshman law student could completely destroy the argument that because these are found in a certain order, which they're not always found in that order, therefore it shows a relationship that one's turning into the other. Why don't we see them turn into the other today? There are animals with the nose on the front today. Do any of those turn into one with the nose behind the head with the whale? We don't see any of this happening. It's imagination. I think the flood of Noah lasted about a year. He was in the ark for a year. And the tide going up and down is by far the best explanation for all the stratification of the earth, period. At the same time, there's probably a lot of volcanoes going off because the fountains of the deep broke open. The earth is all busted up, and there's rings of fire, and there's fault lines all over the world today. I think all that happened because of Noah's flood. So sure, there would be sedimentary rock mixed with igneous rock, mixed with metamorphic rock. The flexing of the plates of the earth would create metamorphic rock, changed by the heat and pressure just of the friction and moving. So I think you've been taught that the layers are different ages, and the creatures found in those layers have to be, therefore, one changing into the other. Finding animals in order of burial does not prove one's related to the next. If I get buried on top of a squirrel, does that prove he's my grandfather?
No.
No.
But you're not separated by multiple layers of igneous rock. You'd be in the same sedimentary layer, which I just said you can't differentiate ages if you're in the same sedimentary layer.
Okay, so there's a squirrel, then there's a volcano, puts a layer of ash, and then I get buried on top. So therefore, I'm related to the squirrel because there's igneous rock between us?
No.
The order of burial means zero, nothing. The fact that an animal is lower does not mean it's older, first of all, and does not mean it's related.
So kind of rephrase your argument. You're saying that the ages can't differ the deeper you go into the ground, because in the flood, things have different mobility, things have different density, things have different, intelligence. Maybe they can escape the flood better than others. Is that kind of where we're getting at?
I said the first sentence, I lost it, what you just said here, but I'm not saying, I'm saying that the layers of the earth could all have been formed in 1 year. We have the evidence for that from polystrata trees.
I do want to talk about polystrata trees. So if we finish this point and then talk about polystrata trees, that'd be awesome. Okay,
so I pointed out, watch the video, Experiments in Stratification. You will see clearly the strata form horizontally, not vertically. Secondly, the polystrata trees, I think, are evidence the layers are not different age. But then they're just logic. Where's this layer coming from? The geologic column is mostly sedimentary rock. Well, sediment
but
from...
not all.
No,
not
most
all
of it is.
Rock.
Where's it coming from? You look at the Grand Canyon, the limestone. They got how many different layers of limestone?
Can we go back to that slide because I wanted to talk about that a little bit, the density.
The one I just did on which one?
Yes, sir. You just canceled out of it. The separating on density and intelligence and mobility and things.
Oh, okay. I have 50,000 slides.
I can imagine you have a lot. If it's too much of a house, so you don't have to pull it up.
I can find it again in just a minute.
But the issue with that statement, it makes sense in theory. That's a good prediction, right? That's the first step to science, is make this prediction. Say, I believe there was a flood, therefore things should be separated based on density, mobility, and intelligence.
I think there'd be many factors, okay? First of all, we don't know that the flood was the same conditions every square inch of the earth for the whole time. Some parts of the world might have only been covered for 2 weeks.
I agree. Yeah. If there was a flood, it probably wasn't the same throughout. And
it wouldn't take but a few hours to kill everybody, if you have enough water. So I think some parts of the world, I'll find it here.
Okay, while you're finding that. I agree that, your flood, I'll give you the point that the flood was not the same everywhere. Then why are the geologic columns the same everywhere?
They are not.
Why do we only find the
no. You will find them completely inverted. You will find the Cenozoic era on top of there. It's all scrambled up. That's why they scrambled. I've got an article where they said they found the geologic column in the order they wanted it in North Dakota.
Yep.
Well, why don't they find it in Alabama?
Because of unconformities.
So how do you know which one's right?
Because when we have the whole geologic column, we have we date them based on the type of rock that's there as well. Not specifically just igneous, specific kinds of igneous rock. So at this layer, which we called, I'm not good with the names of them, but this layer we gave a name, right? Some rudimentary name, and said this is this old based on dating. When you reach this rock and this kind of formation, it was formed at the same time, because we only see that formation at this depth. And so you can find layers that don't have all the geologic column because of something called unconformity. That layer could have eroded away. The unconformity means there's something missing here. It's not conform with the geologic column, unconform. Therefore, it eroded away. But however, the columns that are there are always in the correct order. You don't ever find the bottom layer above the top layer.
How would you know?
Ever find that.
For example, the Grand Canyon contains, I think, I'm going to pick a number and say 12 different layers of limestone.
Okay.
Is the bottom layer of limestone different age than the top layer of limestone?
Not different age.
They're both sedimentary. No, you don't know that. You can't prove that. If I shake this up, this just made, wow, look at that, 12 layers while we sit here and talk. Is the bottom layer older? Or every grain of sand in here is the same age?
The problem with that is you were just laughing at me for saying that we're different ages and mocked me for saying that did they come from outer space? But in that example, they are coming from outer space. It's falling from the sky.
Well, they're all in the glass container at the same time.
So yes, in that case, when they fall from the sky, it's not, you can't attack that, right? That makes sense, but it doesn't. It comes from within and is laid from within. Okay. So
see, the flood of Noah would shake up and just the fountains of the deep breaking open, the flexing of the earth's crust, the movements of the plates would cause all kinds of sedimentation, scrambled up.
I'd agree with that. And we find evidence of floods in certain areas, right? And that's absolutely true. But we see them, and geologists can say there was a flood here. That happens. We see floods, like you said, I'm in Tennessee, right? We flood pretty badly. Right. We see floods and we see sediment after it floods. So yes, it happens. But the issue with that is if we see non-sediment rock, right? And going to that, which I had you pull up, and thank you for pulling that up. I appreciate it. Again, that's a good prediction, but we can test it and see it's not true. But there's no common denominator of why, if you want to go off of density, why don't we find, I looked it up here, Blainville's beaked whales have the densest bone in the animal kingdom. Is not every single beaked whale at the bottom? Why are hippos not at the bottom with their dense bones? Why do we not only find bird fossils at the top? Because they're separated by density, so we should only ever find bird fossils at a reasonable depth that we can dig. But
are all bird fossils found in the same layer?
No.
Then why not? They're all the same body density roughly. And the fact that the whale has a bone.
That was my point.
Whales also have blubber that floats. So the fact that they have a dense bone does not have anything to do with where they're going to be buried. I just pointed out it would be logical to conclude these would be major factors. I think if you went out west, you may find herds of buffalo bones that died, none of them fossilized. You can't find, if there were a flood that buried them all, you probably wouldn't find many human bones with them because humans don't hang out with buffalo. So it's habitat, nothing to do with evolution.
Flood, it wouldn't matter if they were 2 miles away. The water would have brought them together and they would have been buried together anyway under their layers of all sediment rock.
In some places they'd be brought together, other places they'd be scattered apart. But I think
we don't ever see them together.
Well, I want you to understand, we only got 3 minutes left here. Your entire argument for evolution is based upon the assumption that we have billions of years for it to take place in, and that animal can change to something else. You have a simple creature at the bottom, like typically an amoeba or something like that, and this is what they teach. Everything came from a single-celled creature. This is not observable science. This is a family tree. This is fairy tale stuff. This is imagination. Humans and birds are related, and you're related to a mosquito. If you go back, you have a common ancestor with a mosquito. Professor Dave has a common ancestor is related to a strawberry.
I got to shout out to Professor Dave. I was going to use my organic chemistry note cards to try to do an example. I'm still holding them. He has saved my life with organic chemistry. So,
Professor Dave,
I appreciate him.
Professor Dave is brilliant in some areas, but he has been thoroughly brainwashed about evolution. I wouldn't argue with him about calculus or trig or geometry or organic chemistry, but he believes he came from a rock 4.6 billion years ago.
I don't think he believes that.
Crazy.
But even since I don't believe that. But going to what you said, finishing up here, yes, We've never seen directly observed. Actually, I'm going to go back on that. We have seen life change. We've seen single cellular life turn into multicellular life. We have. This is peer-reviewed, published. We've seen it.
I would
Even
disagree.
then,
We've seen single-celled creatures bond together to colonize, to fight off an enemy. We've never seen them produce a wing or a bone or a leg or a lung or an organ of any kind. You get a group of single-celled
and being multicellular are very different things.
Okay, can that multicellular colony mate with another multicellular colony and produce a multicellular colony, or do they each go back to their single cell to reproduce?
If we're talking gametes, with their gametes, our reproduction is single cell. Two single cells come together. The female oocyte and the male sperm.
I understand that real well. Made three myself. So the
that's not a point. It does happen one cell by definition. Sexual. Okay. That happens with one cell.
Well, that cell in the sperm and in the egg contained a nucleus that contained the DNA code that already had the information to make an arm and a leg. Did your colony of single-celled creatures that got together have the information to make an arm or a leg or a lung or an eyeball? No.
But being multicellular allows them to differentiate. So now all of a sudden, if you have, it's kind of analogous to what happened with humanity, right? Eventually, at first we were hunter-gatherers and we had to hunt for our food. And then all of a sudden we figured out how to grow food. And now what does that allow? That allows us to have a surplus of food. So now people can differentiate. We can have people become artists. We can have people still hunt. We can have people build things. We can have people be musicians, right? It's the same idea with multicellular. As soon as you don't have to focus every cellular process in a single cell, food production, maintaining homeostasis, everything with the environment. As soon as you have multicellular cells, we can say, okay, y'all on the outside focus on homeostasis because y'all are exposed to the environment. Now, y'all on the inside, maybe y'all can take away from maintaining homeostasis because you're not exposed to the extracellular matrix. Y'all can focus on food production. Y'all can focus on so on and so forth. And that's how we eventually get to the point where you can say, okay, y'all, these cells grow outwards. Okay, cool. So they grow outwards. And what does that allow? So on and so forth. Being multicellular is the most important evolutionary step, in my opinion. I'm sure that people would disagree, but it's at least up there, and we have seen it. And that allows everything that we see today to happen.
This is SpongeBob imagination. We don't observe it. We don't observe any creature all of a sudden develop skin to fight off the environment, and we don't see this. Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. You've been taught some good science, and they mix their religion in with it, and you swallow them both together. I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think
we take questions.
Gentlemen. Awesome discussion. Kent and Preston, you guys both brought the numbers for sure. We've been easily over 320 people live watching this epic debate. Yeah, and very great discussion. I love how free-flowing it was and just conversation style. Lots of good points discussed. We are basically a minute over the discussion, and so we'll wrap it up here. And let me restart the timer. What I want to do, though, is give you both a 3-minute closing statement. This way you can wrap up your thoughts, wrap up your points. If there's anything you wanted to say but haven't had the opportunity to do so, you can do that in the 3-minute closing statement. That way I'll organize the questions and we'll have a solid, 20-ish minute audience Q&A. So Preston, we'll have you give your 3-minute closing statement first. We'll do the same for Kent, then we'll get into some questions. So whenever you're ready, Preston, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate this again. And Mr. Kent, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. For a closing statement, I just want to say that today with the debate, let me go a different direction. I really wanted from this to hopefully show people that science is amazing. Okay. I love science. I'm a cellular biology major. I teach science. I'm a TA for microbiology, health science, microbiology. I love science and I love teaching it. And the problem I have with often the dogmatic view of creationism is the fact that I think it's and creationism doesn't always have to be dogmatic. I think everyone is able to have their own views, and I respect that, and I absolutely support them for believing it. I might not agree, but my issue comes when it becomes dogmatic. because these children that are growing up in these environments are learning they're demonizing science often, these creationists. And to me, that's heartbreaking, because science is so important. Science is why we have antibiotics. Science is why cancer survival has increased exponentially over the last so on and so forth. Why human birth is so much more safer than ever it was. Science is why we have everything, and why 90% of us are still alive. All of us have been sick before that might have killed us if we were born a few hundred years ago, right? Science is incredible. And I really want to push anyone that's watching this, that even if you're slightly on the fence, please look things up and have an open mind, okay? Because I had an open mind when I first started watching these debates, and my belief in evolution was starting to get questioned. And I was like, they're making good points, and I did my own research. And I found out that 99, almost willing to say all of the points, have an actual reasonable explanation. So I pray that y'all here today watching this debate are willing to go for it, especially if you're younger and you're still figuring out what you want to do. Look things up, make your own conclusions. Don't let what other people tell you, mischaracterizing science, formate your belief. Science is freaking amazing. And thank y'all for watching, and thank y'all for sticking with us through this debate. Go learn some science. It's freaking amazing. Thank you.
Okay, Preston, thank you so much for that 3-minute concluding statement. Now we're going to hand it over to Kent. Kent, whenever you're ready, you also have 3 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I would agree that only on the opposite side, it's evolution that is dogmatic. It's not the creationists that are dogmatic. You guys are dogmatic about your geologic column, which does not exist. You're dogmatic about your fossil record, which does not exist. Fossils only form under special conditions. The flood would do that. So many things you said, children, I'm not demonizing science. I love science. I taught biology, earth science, physical science for 15 years. I love science. We have a school here. We have all kinds of science lessons and science activities here. We don't demonize science. We think evolution is polluting science. Evolution has nothing to do with science. Science, what we can observe, study, test, demonstrate, we love science. So don't say creationists demonize science. Evolutionists pollute science with their religion. Charles Darwin said, to suppose the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. And it is, Charlie, it's absurd. 1 square inch of your retina has 137 million light-sensitive cells. You really believe that happened by chance over billions of years, coming from a creature that had no eyes at all? The protozoa, you say it learned to be multicellular, that's another argument. But the single-celled creature got together and became multicellular, and that would cause it to develop an eyeball? This is insane. I debated a guy named Ed Buckner. He said the human eye is poorly designed because the octopus has a better eye. No, there's a long reason for that. Octopus live underwater. Anyway, so even if something was bad design, that doesn't prove it's not designed. I'd say this is a poor design. I'd say that's a poor design, but it's still designed. I'd say that's going to be tough for 2 people to use at the same time. I don't think I'd want to use that one up there with an open wall like that. That's a cool design. I don't know if that's, anyway. Take a drink of water, coffee, it hurts my left eye. That's kind of a poor design, okay? Have the handle on one side and a spike on the other. I think that's a poor design. How are you going to get in? But it was designed by an idiot, but it was poor design. So the argument, I think, I don't have a problem, Preston. I can see the design in nature and marvel at the God who created it. Wow, this guy is amazing. Do you really think all the complexity we see in the fingertips of a lizard happened by chance over billions of years? Do you really think this came with no designer? Nobody designed it. All forms of life came by blind chance with no designer. Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here. Anybody thinks this happened with no designer, happened, and it all came from a single-celled creature that learned to be multicellular, they need some serious help. I can look at the same things you look at, and I can marvel at the God who created them. Why would a caterpillar want a face that looks like a snake to scare off enemies? How does he know? Does he know his butt looks like the head of a snake? Does he care? This is design all over nature, all over the world. This is phenomenal design. I don't have a problem praising God. You can't do that, Preston. You think nature did it. Nobody ever sees any animal produce a different kind of animal. I think folks that believe they came by chance, there's no intelligent life down here. Open challenge. Preston, pass the word around your university. I will come up there at my expense, debate all your professors at the same time. There is no evidence of any animal ever producing a different kind of animal. Finding them in a different layer doesn't mean one's related to the other. That's not evidence. No evidence at all. You really think this happened by chance? Are you willing to face God and say, God, I looked at these things. I didn't think you did it. You really think that's in common sense, intelligence? I marvel that people have been so brainwashed, especially in the last 200 years. This dumb theory has, I think, polluted science completely. God made everything. I'm not against science. Don't ever accuse me of that. I'm against evolution because it's not part of science. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your concluding statement there, Kent. And again, excellent debate, Preston and Dr. Dino. So let's get right into some of these audience questions. We got a lot of great questions here on the topic for tonight. Is there good evidence for evolution? So let's start here with the super chats. And we'll start with Christopher Silvius. Thank you so much for the support. And the question looks like it's a question for you, Preston. So Christopher's asking, is evolutionary theory possible without relying on the rescue device / magical ingredient of deep time? Go ahead, Preston.
Yeah, it is possible. But I mean, it happened at an exceedingly accelerated rate than what we could ever have imagined. We just showed today that things that are between different layers of igneous rock are different ages. I even had Kent say that they are if something died in sediment and was the volcanic eruption happened above it. So we know for a fact that they are separated by time between layers of rock. They are. That's just a fact of science. And therefore, things change. We see some types of animals at a certain depth and not other kinds of animals at the same depth. But as soon as you get more shallow, we start seeing more and more complexity. And it's amazing. So yes, it is possible without time. It just means it happens in an accelerated rate, which would throw science for a loop, because that would be incredible.
Okay, thank you, Preston, for that response. Kent, over to you if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yes, definitely. Christopher, excellent question, and you are correct. Evolution that's their rescue device. I ask them all the time, why do you think a ladybug came from a single-celled creature? They'll say, well, given enough time. What if you take away time? Time is the pacifier for the atheist. If time doesn't work, give them more time. Oh, wow, billions of years. You watch how many times they refer to billions of years ago, millions of years ago. This is why my attack on their geologic column, that's their Bible. They have to keep that geologic column, and they have to keep billions of years because their whole theory collapses. It is a rescue device. It is a magic ingredient. See, if you kiss a frog and it turns to a prince, we know it's a fairy tale. But if the frog turns to the prince over billions of years, now it becomes science. That's the logic. Dumb, real dumb. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent, for that response. Preston, the question was for you, so we'll give you the last word. Go ahead. Oh, actually, Preston, let me just unmute you. Actually, I think you have to.
I think that was me. I muted on my end. Sorry.
No worries.
What was I going to say? I don't really have too much to add. No one says that a frog or a human is a descendant of a frog. But my statement stands, and I don't think I have anything more to add after Kent's.
Okay, thank you. Okay, appreciate the question from Chris and the responses from the debaters. Okay, so we've got another super chat here. This one comes from Bob Vandalay. This one is for Kent. Thank you so much for your question there, Bob. How did people of Asian descent get their unique eyelid structure? And how did it come about in less than 4,400 years?
Fair question. I don't know the answer for sure, but I know that farmers can take one particular animal and select for a certain trait because they think it looks better, or more milk for the cow, more beef for the cow. It could be that a group of people from Noah's family, as the population was spreading out from the Tower of Babel, they moved off toward China, and maybe several of them had that same unique trait with the fold in the eyelid, okay? The slanted eyes, for example. They're still human. They're still eyes. They can still interbreed with all the rest of us. So that's a meaningless argument. Chihuahuas can still breed with other dogs. I don't know why anybody want to do that, but it can be done. So it's a unique trait that some have white skin, some have darker skin. Still human, still can interbreed. So the Bible says if they can bring forth, they're the same kind. And the Chinese can still bring forth. How they got that? A good question. Is it a mutation? Is it maybe everybody was that way and we're all mutated? I don't know. Doesn't matter. It wouldn't affect evolution theory at all.
I appreciate the response there, Kent. And Preston, over to you. If there's anything you'd like to add, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that's a great example of what evolution can explain, but creationism can't. I mean, you find these examples all the time of something where you can ask a creationist this question and they say, I don't know, but it must be this way because no ark happened. Well, evolution can we have the mechanisms for how this can happen, right? It's population isolation. They only interbreed together, especially earlier in human history. People were not traveling as often. So the people that were in the Asian continent or the Asian area of the earth were interbreeding with each other, but not those living in North America. And so any unique traits that mutate in Asia and the population that was living in Asia at the time are going to be passed on only with people within Asia that they can interbreed with. And over time, some person had a mutation that made the eyes a little bit more, I don't even know the right way to describe it, but less wide, I guess you could say. And over time, that continued to compound throughout the population. I mean, just simple as that.
Okay, thank you for that response there, Preston. Kent, question was for you. You can have the final word if you'd like it.
Yeah, he didn't say anything that would contradict creation. I agree. Isolation of populations causes unique traits to become pronounced. If you took 50 short people under 5 feet tall, moved them out to an island, and they interbreed with each other, pretty soon you'd have an island full of short people. You could do the same with tall people. That's what farmers have done for centuries. They've taken cows that give more milk and say, oh, wow, let's let these breed and not the rest of them. And pretty soon you got a herd of cows that give a lot of milk. But now you got to babysit them because they'll die if you leave them out in the woods. But so, yes, the traits can be accelerated, advanced, encouraged. That's called artificial selection. In the case of the Asian and the eye, it might have been natural selection. Maybe there's a reason. I can't think of any natural event that would cause that to be beneficial, but maybe it was they thought it was more beautiful. So, oh, I'm not going to marry her. Her eyes don't slant. Okay. So maybe it's a natural select. Maybe it's artificial selection, but don't know. It wouldn't matter. That slanted eye is not evidence for evolution. It's still an eye.
Okay, thank you, Kent, for that final word. And moving on, next question comes in from George Bond. Thank you so much. This one is now a question for you, Preston. So George is asking, does Preston know that during horizontal layering, the fossil at the top is older than the one at the bottom? And we can empirically test this.
They're not. I don't know. I don't know if he's talking about specifically sediment, then fine. Maybe if you want to say that the act of the sediment wave coming through pushes it towards the top, fine. I don't know that to be true. If he says it's empirically able to test it, fine. But that wouldn't make that fossil go through layers and layers of igneous and metamorphic rock to get to the surface. It just wouldn't happen. So yeah, it's variance within the strata, which we had talked about earlier. Within sedimentary rock within the strata. That's why we can't date strata, or good Lord, I'm messing up my words. That's why we can't date sedimentary rock. But no, if a fossil is above another fossil, between layers of hard rock, igneous or metamorphic, it had to have died later than the one below it. Had to have. I even had Kent admit that when I gave the example of one sediment layer when the volcanic eruption on day one. It's just how it has to work logically.
Okay, appreciate it there, Preston. And Kent, over to you. The floor is yours.
I wish I had the video clip I could put in, but just Google experiments in stratification and watch the video. You can see it happening. The question, George is completely correct. It is totally possible for a fossil on top to be older than a fossil on the bottom if it's downstream from there. Watch the video. You can see it happen. It is not correct that the layers are different ages. They're not deposited vertically. They may be in some cases. I can make these to get deposited vertically by putting some of the sand on top, or I can just simply tip it. Now they're being deposited by lateral movement. It'll still form layers. A simple sand art experiment will show you the whole geologic column doesn't exist. It's a hoax. There's your Bible, though, Preston. You got taught the wrong thing. Sorry about that. So yes, the question is correct. It is absolutely possible for a fossil on top to be older than a fossil on the bottom because of horizontal stratification. Google experiments in stratification. You can watch it happen for yourself.
Okay, I appreciate the response there, Dr. Hovind. And Preston, we'll give you the last word because this one was a question for you.
Again, I mean, we're not really arguing against me at this point. I already admitted that stratification you're looking at in that video with sediment, it's sedimentation with sediment. So that doesn't explain how fossils can be between different layers of igneous and metamorphic rock. And I've brought that question up multiple times, and we don't have an explanation for it other than the fact that logically, even if you are a creationist, it has to logically be younger if it's above something that is under concrete. I mean, it's not concrete, but you get the analogy. I mean, it just is that simple.
Okay, thank you, Preston. Moving on to the next question. This one comes in from Dwayne Burke. Thank you so much for the support and the question. So he's asking, Preston, God defeated evolution before it was thought of by man through symbiotic relationships. If not, please explain why symbiotic relationships aren't required at the beginning of evolution.
Explain why they're not required at the beginning of evolution. Because they're not required. I don't understand. Does a bacteria need a symbiotic relationship? The earliest life wasn't bacteria, but bacteria doesn't necessarily need symbiotic life. Nothing needs symbiotic life. There are things that may be not true, you know, like cattle and things with their normal flora in their gut to digest cellulose. So there are, but this is late in the game examples, right? Earlier, you don't need it because those didn't take time to develop. So we can look at a present day species and say, take away its symbiotic relationship, it won't be as fit, it won't live as long, or it won't reproduce as much. Fine, but that's because it developed that symbiotic relationship. If you go back in time, that symbiotic relationship wasn't there. It co-evolved with something else and thus became symbiotic.
Okay, thank you, Preston. And Kent, if there's anything you'd like to add, go ahead.
Yeah, that is a answer from Dogma. He doesn't know that to be true. We know that plants absorb CO2 and give off oxygen. Animals absorb oxygen, give off CO2. There's a symbiotic relationship. Which one evolved first? We know that butterflies and bees and insects pollinate the plants. Why would the plant produce pollen to begin with, counting on something else to transport it to another flower? There's billions of symbiotic relationships in nature. I think all of them defy an evolutionary explanation, except as he just gave, well, it had to happen. It's just so. I mean, it did. It's not logical. Which evolved first, the male or the female of any species? And how did they survive without the other one for millions of years? See, if the male evolved first for millions of years later, the first female, you got a problem. That's a symbiotic relationship that's unexplainable by evolution. There are billions of symbiotic relationships. I think they're unexplainable. I think it had to be designed. The nut and the bolt fit each other. They're designed for each other. One's no good without the other.
Okay, thank you very much there, Kent. And Preston, we'll give you the final word. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can say that they were created to be symbiotic. The problem is that's not falsifiable, so it can't be science. We observe things change and we observe things grow together. So that is science. As with the question of what came first, plants or animals or photosynthesis or glycolysis, photosynthesis. The earth was mostly carbon dioxide. Cyanobacteria was able to digest, take that carbon from that CO2, release oxygen, thus oxygenating the atmosphere. Thus, aerobic bacteria could evolve. And thus, another bacteria could actually swallow that cyanobacteria and that aerobic bacteria, become eukaryotic cells, and thus differentiate between animals and plants.
Okay, thank you very much there. Preston, next question comes in from, let's see here. It comes in from Stevie B. Thank you for the question. And he says, I have a question for Preston. Donnie, if the Indo-Hyas had exactly, so it looks like this is referring to maybe some of your opening slides here on whale evolution, had exactly the same middle ear millions of years ago as a whale today has, then why did that single thing remain the same, but the other 99.9% change?
That's a great question. And I actually thought about that when I was preparing for this debate. It's like, why didn't it change, right? If so much did change, why didn't the ear change? And the simple answer is there just wasn't selection pressure for it to happen. There's selection pressure for it to get more, fish-like. I don't want to go that way, but become more dependent on living in water, because maybe there was less. That was an area that was unexplored by mammals. So there's that niche, a biological niche. We won't have to go into that. That was available. There's just no pressure for the middle ear to change. Didn't have to. And so it didn't. Evolution doesn't say every single thing of every animal has to change drastically between variations or between descendants. It says that certain things can change, will mutate. And if that mutation is beneficial, nature's going to select for it. And if that mutation was beneficial, probably more mutations pushing us that way is going to be more beneficial. And so nature is going to select for that. So that's the answer. The middle ear just did not have pressure to change. But there was pressure for it to become more aquatic, to get all that free food that was floating around in the ocean that normal mammals were not using.
Okay, thank you very much there, Preston, for your response. Kent, over to you if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, you need to go back and listen to what he said. It's pure imagination. This isn't observable. We don't ever see any animal change to something else. The fact that the whale and this creature have a similar inner ear bone might mean the same guy designed them. I think probably my Honda and the Toyota both have pistons. Whoa, wow, that proves something. Yeah, it's a good design. It works, okay? So you don't need to change a good design that works. I think God gave creatures two bones in the wrist, and humans have them, and not butterflies, but the birds have them. It's a good design. Why change it? It works. So I think the evidence for design is written all over the place. I don't know how they don't see it. So my answer would be the Indo-Hyas has the same middle ear bone as the whale. If it does, let's assume that's true. I don't know that that's true. I never looked at the inner ear bone of a whale. But what did that mean? It could still be the same designer. It's a design that works. And why wouldn't the rest of it change? What he gave is what's called a just so answer. Well, it's just so. They didn't need to change. But the rest of it needed to? Show me that scientifically. That's not science. That's a religion. He just shared his faith. Great faith. Go ahead.
All right, appreciate the response there. Kent, Preston, question was for you. We'll give you the last word.
Kent said something I completely agree with. He said that it didn't need to change. It was a good design, and therefore it didn't change, right? When he was talking about the risk. I don't believe a God designed it. I believe natural selection and mutation. Well, mutation designed it by accident, if you want to go there, and nature selected for it. That's why when you go back in the fossil record, our first tetrapods that have limbs, by definition, that are vertebrates and have limbs, have the exact same build that we do today. It was a fantastic design and a fantastic way for it to happen. That's why it's the same throughout most tetrapods. 99%. I don't know if I'm sure with biology, there's always exceptions. So I'm sure I can find one. But that's why in whales, they still have the same build of arm that we do in their fins.
Okay, Preston, thanks for the final word. Next question comes in for Kent this time from Creationist Crybaby. So CC is asking your best buddy there, Kent.
Oh, yeah. Bring it on.
Why do you incorrectly define the term vestigial? It does not mean a part has no use. Vestigial parts do not have the function that we see in such parts in other animals.
Well, his question has a built-in assumption to it that's false. I don't incorrectly define the term vestigial. So he starts off, why do you incorrectly define the term? I don't. Why do you have hair growing on your knuckles? I don't. Okay, so it's the questions. You do. Okay, Preston, I don't. Well, between the knuckles, not on the finger bone, but not on the knuckle. Okay, yeah. I'd like to see it if you do. Send me a picture of that. So vestigial parts do not have the function that we see in such parts in other animals. But the whole idea behind vestigial is something that is no longer needed and the body or a creature is slowly losing it. They say the whale has vestigial limbs. The modern whales have hind limbs which have been reduced to a few tiny internal limb bones that have no function. This is what the textbooks teach. Imagine the whale walking around. These are the bones they're talking about, and they claim they are vestigial hip bones of a whale. This is absolute baloney. Those bones have very specific functions. That's part of the whale's reproductive system. They support muscles that allow the whales to reproduce. He's got a 15-foot penis. He's got to maneuver in the dark, underwater, with no arms, and he can't talk and say, scoot over, honey. He needs all these muscles to move things around in the dark. There's nothing to do with evolution. It's not vestigial. I'll tell you what, crybaby, if you think there's a vestigial part of your body, if you think the tailbone is vestigial, I will pay to have yours removed. Matter of fact, I got a Swiss Army knife. I'll take it out myself. I know right where it's at, taught anatomy, okay? You don't have any things vestigial in your body, neither do I. You can live without some things. You can live without both your arms and both your eyes, too. It doesn't mean you don't need it. So I don't think there are any vestigial structures. I think the whole argument is silly for evidence for evolution. Plus, how could losing things tell how we got everything? That's the opposite of evolution. So keep crying. By the way, crybaby, I've got both your pacifiers right here. Time and more time. We can stop the crying. Go ahead.
Kent and crybaby always keeping it fun. So thank you.
Donnie, have him come on for a debate.
Yes, crybaby.
Please. If he won't, put him on your list. How many people have refused to debate now?
I think we've got about 33 or 34 pages worth of.
Okay, put crybaby on there if he won't. Okay, go ahead.
Crybaby, here's your official challenge. Preston, okay, we'll hand it over to you. And if you had anything to add, go ahead. Floor is yours.
Yeah, this is actually something I misunderstood up until probably 2 weeks ago. I thought the definition of vestigial organ was, no longer useful. It doesn't do anything. But I actually looked up the first paper that it was coined in by Robert Wiedersheim, some German scientist, and he actually described vestigial organs as formerly of greater physiological significance than at the present. So that was something I misunderstood up until not too long ago. But for something to be vestigial does not mean that it has to have zero function, it has to have reduced function. So the whale pelvic bone is a vestigial structure, even though it still has a function with anchoring its penis. But the fact that it was of formerly greater importance because it anchored their penis and allowed them to walk. Now we lost half of that. So still vestigial, but I agree, does not have a function.
Okay, thank you, Preston. And Kent, the question was for you, so we'll give you the last word.
I believe what I said is it's losing its function, and that they think the whale used to have hip bones, like Preston just said. He's dreaming, okay? You don't know that the whale used to have legs and lost them. You know that the whale has these bones, and you know they work. That we know. Any imagination story about them used to have legs, that's imagination. Same thing with the giant big snakes have these similar, they have claws and bones right there, and they go up into their body. This is part of their mating system. Snakes can't talk, and they can't, they don't have arms to grab their mate. This is how they mate. That's not a vestigial structure. You can imagine it was, but it's not science. But the textbooks call it rudimentary hind legs of a python. No, this is part of their reproductive system. Vestigial organs, a tailbone, no apparent use. So the books do teach some of them no use, or they formerly had a use. Either way, it's a ridiculous argument for evolution. That would be losing. And crybaby, I'll take yours out if you'd like. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Kent, for that final word. And what I'll do is start wrapping it up here with one or two more questions. As always, we've had a lot of questions sent in. We could do this all night, I'm sure, but we have to wrap it up somewhere. So this next one comes in from IWKAOY. Okay, so $5 super chat. Thank you so much. And the question is for you, Preston. So we'll read it here. If animals survive before evolving vital organs, why animals can't survive after evolving vital organs? Let's reword that a little. Why can't animals survive after evolving vital organs? Go ahead.
I think what he's getting at is saying, like, before the heart evolved, they could survive, but now if I remove my heart, I can't survive, I think is kind of what he's getting at. And it's not because the heart just popped up. It's not like the first person had a heart and everyone before them didn't have a heart. It's slow changes over time. The same way that I can't necessarily say, like, you can't point to the first person that ever spoke Spanish instead of Latin, right? It had slowly changed to Spanish. And you can't really say, no, this is the point that it was Spanish and not Latin. You just can't. It's just kind of a metaphysical position of being both at the same time. And it's the same thing with vital organs. I mean, you can look up the mechanisms. For a lot of vital organs, we found the mechanisms of how these evolved. And you can look those up, and they're very fascinating to read. But they didn't just pop up, and thus everyone before it didn't have it. It was slow changes from simple to more complex.
Okay, thank you, Preston, for that response. Kent, anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a good question. If they could evolve, if the animals could live for millions of years without legs, why did they evolve legs at all? Get around faster. There's still animals, still creatures that don't have legs, amoeba, protozoa. So why don't they grow legs today? Why don't we see it happening now? They show on the charts, and I showed many times, they claim that the single-celled creature became all these other creatures. Well, there's plenty of single-celled creatures in the world. Do it again. They'll say, well, it takes more time. There you go again. There's their pacifier. So, and he said Latin slowly changed to Spanish. I would agree. That was with a lot of intelligent input. Where's the intelligent input to change a protozoa to a human or a whale or a bird or something like that? Who's putting in the intelligence to create this extra features? Protozoa don't have eyes, arms, legs, heart, lungs. They don't have it. A lot of DNA information has to be added, like trillions of gene codes have to be added to do this. And we don't see it. That's all. It's precedent. It's a religion. You believe it very strongly. Congratulations. It's not science. Nothing to do with science.
Okay, I appreciate it there, Kent. And Preston, we'll give you the last word.
Okay. I've never really gotten your theory as a religion argument, considering that your theory is a religion. So even if they were two religions, that doesn't change the evidence. But and you talked like, why don't current eukaryotes, single cell eukaryotes, protozoa is what we call them, evolve now into animals? It's because there's already animals. So it's all about niche. So a biological niche is what's available, or rather, what does this species specifically use in its environment? And you can have available niches, like no bird in this ecosystem nests at the top of the tree. So therefore, if a bird starts nesting there, that's where they live and they can function there happily. There was a time where there was no mammals, there was no birds, there was no land-dwelling animals. So there was the ability for that to bring forth. And that ability is still there innately, but it's not going to happen, because if you change slightly, you're just going to get eaten again, right? Now, all of a sudden, these protozoa, these single-celled eukaryotes, were once the most incredible Lamborghini, right? They're brand new eukaryotes. They're incredible, incredibly complex. They're single-celled. Now, all of a sudden, they went from the best of the best to now the bottom of the food chain. So they're just not going to, they don't have the opportunity to evolve like this anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Naturally.
Okay, thank you, Preston. We are now going to make this the last question. I want to wrap it up. I want to respect the time that the debaters have given to us tonight. Thanks again, Kent and Preston. And so this one comes in from Echoing Erudite. And again, this is the final question for the night, and it is for Kent. So he is asking, what specifically needs to be observed for you to accept evolution as presented by Preston.
I love the way they slip in the word accept evolution, as if you just don't accept it yet. No, I don't believe it. Why don't you use the word believe, because it's a belief system, okay? Not something you accept. I accept the fact that cows produce cows. I do not accept the fact that you believe. I do not accept the idea that cows came from a single-celled creature like this chart shows. So it's not something you accept. So back to your question. What specifically needs to be observed for you to accept the evolution as presented by Preston? Preston believes that he and a mosquito have a common ancestor if you go back millions or billions of years, okay? Probably hundreds of millions to be more accurate by their teaching. He believes that. Nobody's ever seen any of these creatures on this chart. Nobody has ever seen a shark produce a non-shark. They show the shark coming from a protozoa. That nobody's ever seen a fern produce a non-fern, or a starfish produce a non-starfish. Why would they have them all connected with lines to a common ancestor? This isn't science. This one happens to use a protozoa. Okay, some use a bacteria. Protozoa turned to a biology teacher. Where's the evidence? They still have protozoa. Put them in the laboratory and change them into something else. They show the line on paper changing it to a human. This isn't science. You don't accept something like that. You believe something like that. So, echoing erudite, you don't accept evolution. You have to believe in evolution. It's a religious belief. You're welcome to have it, but don't call it science, and don't pollute real science with that dumb religion. My humble opinion. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much for that response there, Kent. Preston, we'll hand it over to you if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I don't think you could really ever, if someone's truly like into creation and they fully believe in God and creation, I don't think that you can really ever, I don't want to generalize, but I think a lot of times beliefs are so cemented that even if they bring up one point and we explain that point, then they say, okay, but what about this point, right? So I think that's an innate issue with it, with having faith behind what you assert, is that oftentimes your faith is what dictates what you believe, and thus you look for things that assert that belief. As for protozoa turning into everything, when you really zoom in, what are we all? We're cells. What are we specifically? We're eukaryotic cells. And so all this life that is eukaryotic and they're made of eukaryotic cells is just the same collection of cells doing things differently. I mean, when you really simplify it, that's all it is. It's just cells doing their own thing differently than other people. And that manifests itself in humans, that manifests itself in dragonflies, that manifests itself in protozoa, just single cellular eukaryotes. So that's really what it comes down to, right? We're all eukaryotes. We all are made up of cells, cell theory of life. We're all made of cells. Cells come from cells, and cells are the basic unit of life. So we're all cells doing their own thing in slightly different ways.
Okay, Preston, thank you so much. Again, this is the last question for tonight, and it was a question for you, Kent. So we'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Well, Preston, if you comprehended the complexity of a single cell, your body probably has 100 trillion cells. Each cell has probably 100 trillion atoms. Each cell of your body. You really think it all happened by chance? Now, what you said, you need to go back and listen to what you said about if a person really, truly is into creation and believes in creation, kind of like it's going to be hard to get them out of that. This is true of the evolutionists. You have a great faith. You are totally committed to your faith, and it's going to be hard to get you out of it. It's like convincing somebody you've been taught something wrong all these years. You paid a bunch of money to get a degree where they taught you something dumb. You came from a protozoa and you're related to a mosquito? That's dumb. We don't see this happen. We see protozoa produce protozoa. You can do it in the laboratory. Make them slowly turn them into anything else but a protozoa. It doesn't happen. It isn't science. I wish you guys would quit polluting science. If you wish to believe these family trees, go start a private school, teach it to your kids, but quit making everybody pay to teach it to everybody's kids. You guys are damaging science by teaching evolution.
All right. Thank you, Kent, for that final word. And again, Kent and Preston, I appreciate the time you've given to all of us. We've had up to 350 people watching this debate live with a ton of great feedback and engagement from the chat, including a lot of questions. So let's have some final words, final thoughts, if you gentlemen wanted to. That wraps up the debate. And again, thanks so much. Preston, thanks for being willing to engage in this important topic. And to some quick final words, final thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kent said that if I understood the complexity of cells, I wouldn't believe in evolution. I'm a cellular biology major with a 4.0 GPA in an accredited university. I understand cells incredibly well, more than you can. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but you're not a cell and biology major, okay? I understand them incredibly well, and I'm still learning every single day. I don't believe, and this is going to sound crazy to creationists. I can already see the what? Life is too complex to be designed. That's my belief. Too complex. It couldn't have been built from the top down where everything was created how it is. It had to have happened from extremely simple and getting more and more complex, adding little tiny pieces on at a time. That's the only way we can really explain it. And I think that would be. Other than that, I appreciate everything. Kent, I really do appreciate you being here, having a nice conversation with me. Hopefully sometime we can conversate, not in a debate setting. I'd like to maybe have a beer with you. You don't drink beer, do you? You don't drink? I'll make you a Shirley Temple, okay? We can. I'll drink. You can have a Shirley Temple. We can talk about things, just talk about life, right? I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree on. So I really do appreciate you being here and willing to have this conversation. And Donnie, I really do appreciate you always hosting these debates and being truly impartial with how you moderate it, despite we know what you believe, but you do a fantastic job moderating. So I appreciate you all being here and doing this. I appreciate the audience for watching. And I hope maybe just one person, if I maybe steer them another direction, I'll take that as a win. So thank you all. Really do appreciate everything.
Okay, Preston, I appreciate those final words, final thoughts, and feedback. Kent, we'll hand it over to you. Final words, final thoughts. Thanks again for doing this. And go ahead, Dr. Oben.
Well, Preston, you've spent a lot of time studying the complexity of cells. This is wonderful. I'm glad you did. I'm proud of you, okay? That's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn about a cell, a whole lot, okay? And the interaction between other cells. But if somebody really, really studied and memorized every single line of a fairy tale, and they said, I know the fairy tale of Goldilocks better than anybody else. Okay, yay. It still doesn't make the story true. What you've learned isn't true. It's not true that the complexity of the cell happens slowly, a little bit at a time. Not true. God made the world, he owns it, and he made the rules. And we're all guilty of breaking his rules, like the 10 Commandments, and we're going to be punished, or you got to find a substitute. And Jesus Christ is willing and able. You got to admit, Preston, what you are believing certainly calls Jesus Christ a liar. He said nothing died until Adam sinned. He said Adam was the first man. Read the Bible. You're clearly calling the Bible a lie, which you're welcome to do, but you need to understand this is dangerous. Aristotle's dictum. If you're wrong, if you're right, I've lost nothing. If I'm right, you've lost everything. Okay? So I think it's the blind leading the blind. You have a teacher I will accuse right now of being blinded into believing evolution, and I'll come debate your teacher in front of your class. I'll drive up at my own expense. Okay? Evolution isn't true. It's a philosophy, and you've been spoiled by it. That's all. I'd like to see you get saved. I'd like to see you give your heart to the Lord. God's got room for you and his family. Come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. I'll fix you a smoothie. And since they've declared tomato is now a fruit, ketchup would be a smoothie, right? No. God cannot lie. God promised if you'd ask him, he'd save you. I did that 53 years ago, almost 54. Good. I'm going to heaven. I'd like to see you go too. We've broken his laws. Preston, simple question. If you died today, where would you go?
So if I can say, I know this was ending statements, Donnie. So were you not done? I apologize, Ken, if I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Okay. If it's okay, Donnie, just a quick addressing of that. Okay. Thank you all. I do believe in God. I didn't mention that up until this point. I pray to him every night. I don't necessarily subscribe to a specific religion, but I talk to God and I think he talks to me. So I didn't bring that up today because I don't think my faith plays a big part of it. But I do believe in God, and it took a lot of time for me to reach the point of how I could facilitate the views I own with, creation and evolution and everything. But I believe I've worked it out in my head, and it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to figure that out and a lot of stress to try to get this to work. But I think I've reached the point that I'm able to get it to work, and I'm happy with that. And hopefully, if God that I believe in did actually create everything, he'd be willing to forgive me for foregoing that evidence, that line of evidence, and believing in him anyway.
Okay, Preston, Kent, thank you both for those final words and final thoughts. Again, great debate. And to the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back in about 30 seconds for some reminders and some announcements. And again, thanks so much. We'll talk soon. All right, I am back, ladies and gentlemen. That, as I like to say, that is another one in the books. That was an excellent debate. These are my kinds of debates where you've got a nice free-flowing conversation going, lots of excellent points and topics discussed. It's professional. There's healthy interruptions, right, in terms of asking clarifying questions. And I really enjoyed this debate. So please share it around. We hit up to 350 live for this epic debate. And if you love debates on this topic, 2022 has been a big year. At the start of this year, actually December 2021, we put out the 2022 Evolution Debate Challenge series. And we have now, we have incorporated several related to the age of the earth topic and the flood topic, but generally it's been evidence for evolution, and we have incorporated several on just separate ancestry. But nonetheless, I have a playlist titled the Evolution Debate Challenge series, and this would make for our 50th debate this year, just alone on this series. So it's been a ton of fun. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, check out that playlist. You can also check the official website for endless content, standingfortruthministries.com. Check the category section and look under the Evolution Debate Challenge, and you'll find most of those debates there. So it's been a wild year. It's been a ton of fun. And overall, in terms of all topics, we've done debates on soteriology, the nature of God, the King James Bible issue, and just general debates on atheism, ancestry, so on and so forth. Please do check the playlist titled Debates Hosted by Standing for Truth. And we have hosted now about 230 to 240. As a matter of fact, last week was a debate marathon. So we did several debate marathons during the summer. Summer was huge. Summer was a ton of fun. Went by too quick. But we had a lot of debates this summer, a lot of epic debates. So last week we did another one of these debate marathons. And so We started the week with a debate between Dr. Dino and Grayson. This one was another great discussion. This one was one to remember. I enjoyed re-listening to this one. I debated Grayson a couple weeks ago as well. And I just sat Grayson and Dr. Dino. They'll be having their round 2 at the end of December. I'll be debating Grayson again, I believe, the first week of December. We want to end this year with a bang. So I just finished over the weekend. I took the weekend off because we had 5 shows in a row. Okay, we had 5 shows in a row. If you haven't checked them, we started the week dismantling dispensationalism, salvation in the Old Testament with Pastor Tommy McMurtry. We should be doing a follow-up to this soon as well in the next few weeks, hopefully. Again, we had Grayson versus Kant. We had a debate on the King James Bible topic. Is the King James Bible free from all errors? Anybody that wants to debate this topic, please reach out. I love this topic. It always makes for an interesting debate, and we can set that up. We also had Kelly Powers and David Preston. Did Peter preach a different gospel than Paul? And our main event, the much anticipated Matt Slick versus Jake the Muslim metaphysician. This debate was epic. This debate did not disappoint. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do check it out. I think it wrapped up about 5,000 views in 1 or 2 days. And yes, please do check that out because that was an epic debate. I just saw in the, okay, so we want to make December, obviously December is the final month this year. We want to go out with a bang. Over the weekend, I took the weekend off from streaming and I booked another 7 or 8 debates for December and a couple for January. So I'm now starting to book in January as November is completely booked for the most part. Might be able to squeeze in 1 or 2 more in November, but December is almost full too. And then January 2023, it's going to be a tough year to beat and top, but we are going to do our best. So, atheist comments. Yes, we want to get a couple more in there for December in terms of the Evolution Debate Challenge series. And so I think we've got 1 on evolution, 1 or 2 so far for December. So if you're an evolutionist, atheist, theistic evolutionist, whatever it is, and you want to take the Evolution Debate Challenge, please reach out. You can easily find my email on the YouTube channel or just go to standingfortruthministries.com and go to contact. And we will set up your debate today. Okay, next week we've got, this is going to be an excellent debate, technical debate, evolution debate, cladomonas, single cell to multi-cell. We got Jamie from the Studio 215 official YouTube channel and Taylor, seasoned evolutionist debater. Snake was right. They will be debating this important topic as well. So again, yes, reminder, any evolutionists in the chat, please do reach out and we will set you up for a debate on this important topic. We've also got a debate coming up on soteriology. Actually, I just booked a couple on this topic. So Eli Haytov and J.D. Martin, they will be debating what is true biblical salvation. I just booked Charles Jennings from the Layman Seminary. He'll be debating Turretin fan. So 2 very well-educated and scholarly brothers, Turretin fan and Charles Jennings. They will be debating the topic of soteriology. Specifically, the question will be, do all believers persevere/endure? And that's going to be pretty epic as well. I am just working on getting all the thumbnails, and hopefully this week I'll have all of these debates set up and up on the channel for people to check out. Also just booked the Great Baptism debate. So that's coming up middle of December. And that'll be Jeremiah from the Apologetic Dog channel versus Mark Gageton. So it'll be a Lutheran specific debate, actually. So I'm looking forward to that one. And just looking at the chat here real quick. Okay. So yes, I should have up on the channel this week the events, the debates that I've just set. Had a couple questions come in during the debate pertaining to some of our books, specifically Special Creation. So this is the full color edition. It is updated and expanded, as everybody knows. Basically, it's a whole new book from the older version, but it touches on all your topics: mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosome Noah, talks about endogenous retroviruses, chromosome 2 fusion, nested hierarchies. It's one of the most comprehensive book, I would say, out there on the topic of ancestry, separate or universal ancestry. So most of our books, we do have, I think we've published now about 15 or 16. Most of our books are in Kindle, but not all of them are, in the sense, I know this one's not in Kindle. We do have black and white and full color. So if basically you don't want to buy from Amazon and you just want like an ebook, you can reach out and we'll work something out. I can send you an ebook of Special Creation. Also, End Times Revealed. This has been out for a little while now as well. Very comprehensive book written by myself on just eschatology, end times theology, gets into preterism, post-trib, pre-trib, post-millennialism, amillennialism, all the fun stuff. This one is now available actually on Kindle. So you can get a Kindle edition, and you can get a black and white edition. You can also get a full color edition. So these topics, especially eschatology for 2023, I want to start having some panel discussions, roundtable debates. I've got a lot of ideas for 2023 to kind of spice things up. Maybe even some 2v2 debates. I'm looking in the chat here, and Layman Seminary says SFT will give you my contact. Yes. So, we're always looking for new faces. We're always looking for new debaters. So if you're interested in debates on soteriology, the Evolution Debate Challenge series, textual criticism, right, the Bible translation issue, whether you're a TR proponent, KJV only, non-KJV only, reach out. And the more people that I have for the list, then that'll make it easier to match people up. Let me see here. Echoing Erudite. In 2023, do you plan to put out an evidence for creation debate series? Excuse me. Yeah. Basically, I would say maybe an evidence for separate ancestry debate series. That's specifically what I like to debate, is your ancestry. So is it separate ancestry, which would basically be special creation, or universal common ancestry? So I've got a couple debates coming up on that topic. So yeah, we can definitely put out that challenge. And I know we've got several debaters in the world of creation evolution that are associated with our team, either visiting debaters, visiting scholars, or the team itself. There's myself, who's always open to debate separate ancestry. We've got T-Rock. We've got Professor David McQueen. We've got Kent Hovind. And I believe even Ron Matt would debate now and again as well. So again, reach out, let me know, and we can do our best to set you up. Honesty Angel, I want to debate green tea versus coffee. Yeah, I'll definitely be taking the coffee side on that one. Although I do like green tea, but it doesn't quite get my day going in the same way that coffee does. Okay, I think, and I'm always open for ideas, guys. So shoot me an email, leave me comments with recommendations and ideas for debate topics that you'd like to see for 2023. I'll incorporate as many interesting topics. We like a diversity of topics. I mean, last week alone, for our debate marathon, we had a debate on dispensationalism, modern, the Bible translation issue, evolution, the nature of God. And so we like to mix it up. This week coming up, I believe it's Friday, we've got the round 2 debate between Will Kinney and CJ Cox. So this will be the rematch from a debate they had a month or two ago. Both these gentlemen are well studied and knowledgeable on this topic, and this will for sure be a solid rematch. I'm sure we're going to be having Preston. Preston, good to see you in the chat. Excellent debate. Again, we had up to 350 people. So Preston and Kent really brought the numbers for tonight. This is why I like to point out that, 2022, 2023, debates are now being held online. That's where you get the big numbers. You can debate right from home. You have the ease of your computer. You can share a screen. You can do everything from home, and you can do it live. And so you get an easy 300 plus people enjoying this debate, where back in the day, you'd have to do them, you'd have to pick an avenue, take a lot of work, you'd travel, so on and so forth. And you'd get half the numbers that you can get online. So We want to keep pushing this debate community. We want to keep upholding critical thinking through these debates. And so, we're hoping more and more people, especially big names, jump on board, start engaging in more debates, because there's nothing better than getting, individuals of differing views to kind of hash it out in the debate octagon with a fantastic audience, enjoying debates on all sorts of topics. So again, I'm always interested in getting people's feedback, getting people's ideas in terms of debates they'd like to see. And so 2022 has been a huge year. Again, we've hosted now about 230 to 240 debates. And so it's going to be a tough year to top, but I think we can do it. I think we can do it as a community. Let's all come together and let's put together some big shows. And we are going to continue the Evolution Debate Challenge series. We've been calling it the 2022 Evolution Debate Challenge series, but we are going to continue it into 2023. And we are going to try and top 2022. And I think it's possible, because when 2021 ended, I thought it would be impossible to top that year. And we definitely did. We definitely did. So guys, help us get to 12,000 subs. I think we're at 11.7 thousand right now. Share this around to your friends, share this around to your family, and share it around mostly because the truth is important. And of course, critical thinking is important as well. So basically, guys, that's all that comes to mind. Just wanted to give you some reminders and just go over some announcements. I will be continuing my End Times Theology series. I think it's up to about 14 episodes if we also consider the open mic debate that we had with Kent on pre-trib versus post-trib, and also the great rapture debate that I had with J.D. Morin. So if you haven't seen that one, but you love, I've seen a lot of comments from people saying, what about a rapture debate? And I completely agree. Fantastic topic, excellent topic. And if you haven't yet seen it, we just had a rapture debate now about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, between myself and J.D. Morin. So if that's a topic you want to see more of, then we will definitely host more of those, but also check that one out. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me check the chat one more time. Atheist comments. Again, I saw your comment from earlier. Please reach out to me. We can certainly set you up this December for a debate with Kent, and I look forward to having Preston on again as well, probably a round 2 with Kent. Maybe him and I will duke it out as well. I think that would be fun. And with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This debate did not disappoint, and we will see you all a little bit later. God bless.